Welcome. Welcome to my podcast. This is the podcast, The Editor. I am your host and editor, The Editor. I am here. I have some notes. That we need to talk about on this list right here. And the list contains nothing because it is a blank list. Because I don't even have a piece of paper, I have nothing in front of me. I have no guideline out for this one. I listened to that last podcast, the first podcast, the Editor one. That was a great podcast. I listened to it myself at least twice. And, I listened to it once when I edited it, and then there was only like 2 minutes that needed to be edited out. That's how good it was. I'm just that funny, to me, which is really the only opinion that matters here. But that was a good podcast. I listened to this one twice, actually. This podcast that you're listening to right now, episode 2, I've listened to it twice as well. This one's really good, too. If you don't know what's going on here, if you don't know what this is, go listen to episode 1 to know what's going on. We're on episode 2 now. When I was listening to number 1, though, there was a couple things I noticed. There were some things I said that I feel like I need to clarify on, and that I need to kind of be more clear about, because I realized that, basically, one part is I sat there and explained how you're dumb if you get offended, and you're whatever. But that made it sound like I believe that people can just be as mean as they want, and it's not their fault, and it's okay to be offensive. And that's not at all what the truth is. You can't just go around and be offended, and be offensive, and if someone gets offended, you're not in the wrong. I still stand by the fact that it is retarded to get offended at stuff. Don't get offended at stuff. Don't get mad at people, and don't let what people say hurt your feelings. You cannot think of a single good reason in any situation in life, a single good reason to be offended by something, or to anything that you can gain from it, or anything good that can come from it. Sure, you can try and justify it. There are plenty of reasons, like, your wife cheating on you. Of course you're going to be mad. That's a justifiable reason to be mad, but it doesn't help anything or benefit anyone to be mad. Handle the situation appropriately, of course, but I don't know. Obviously, you're gonna, don't get mad at someone if they got offended at that. But more to the point, you can't just go around and be mean to people. Point I'm trying to make: it's always top priority to be as good of a person as possible. Always. And you might say, well, The Editor, if you're using the word retard or calling people gay and you know that offends them, then how are you being as good of a person as possible? And it's a very good question. Lots of people think, everyone knows that lying isn't good. Everyone knows that you shouldn't lie, right? Lying is a bad thing generally. But what lots of people will do is these little white lies, like, does this dress make me look fat? No, you're fine, you're good. Or that's like a stereotypical example. But some of them might be something like, I went and hung out with my friends, but I told my girlfriend that I was studying because she would just get offended at it, and she just doesn't understand, and I wasn't hurting anything from doing it, so it's okay if she doesn't know. But I promise, 100% of the time, if the dress makes her look fat, tell her it makes her look fat. If you have a relationship where you can't go do something that's completely harmless, it's not a good relationship. You need to talk to your wife about that situation. I had so many not problems, but big situations with multiple girlfriends I've had where they didn't want me to do something, and it was completely fine to do. It was morally okay. There was nothing that hurt the relationship about it, nothing that put strain on them. It didn't affect them at all. Something that's completely okay and fine to do. But maybe they were like a tiny bit insecure, so they thought that I would start liking some other girl there, or maybe they, maybe something like that. And in those situations, the reason that you don't just lie and say, oh, I'll just tell her I was doing something else because that'll bother her and whatever. It's because if they know the truth, if they know what the actual truth is, and if you always were to tell the truth, in the long run, like maybe in the short term, you can save yourself, in little situations like that, and you can actually like, oh, I'm so glad, I did that lie, because now this and this and this. But in the long run, it always ends up hurting you. It always ends up hurting you. Because say in the future she finds out you were out with your friends. That's going to start a way bigger fight than if you just told her right there, yeah, listen, I went out with my friends, or hey, I'm going to go out with my friends. Sure, maybe it'll cause a little irritation and friction right then for the time being. But in the long run, the more people that know how things really are, the more... This is actually a hard one to do that I actually got good at doing, that most of you aren't going to be able to do, is I did things in my relationship where I knew that it might even hurt our relationship and may even lead to breakup between me and her, but in her long-term life, it helped her more. And, I loved her and I wanted to help her, and I did things like that. And I'm trying to think of an example, like maybe being completely honest about something about, I don't know, something about her, or something about the way she does something, or something about the way I believed something, or whatever it was. There was tons of situations like that where I thought, if I tell her this and if I explain it to her in this way, she's going to be like maybe less attracted to me, or she's not going to want to date me as long, or whatever. But I knew that in the long run, she subconsciously and consciously would be more aware of how the world is. She would have gone through that experience younger in life rather than later, if it was a problem that everyone's going to run into. It built strength, going through hard times builds strength every time. So, every single time in one way or another. Maybe not. Well, what it does is it changes you. Some people get changed for the worse, like in a bad way, when they go through a hard time. But when the majority, I don't even know if it's a majority, but my point is if something hard is happening to you, and your goal is to get through it, which it should always be, then you're gonna find a way to get through it, eventually. You're gonna keep trying, and you're gonna, maybe it's just my personality, but I know that as many hard times hit me, and the harder they get, maybe they'll get harder and harder, but I do know that I'm going to be getting stronger and stronger and better at handling those. And in the future, something that's equally hard won't feel as hard to me because I'm a changed person. I've been through that more. I know how to do it better. Whatever, it builds on you. Anyway, about the being offensive. You should always be a good person, but part of being a good person is standing up for what is right and standing up for what is true. The world we live in nowadays will drag you down and push you around, no matter what you believe. And especially if you believe what is actually true and you're correct, that's when you're really going to have a hard time. That's when the opposition really, really comes. And part of being a good person doesn't mean pleasing people. Being a good person doesn't mean making sure everyone around you is happy. That's not what it means. Being a good person means standing up for what is right, standing up for what is good, standing up for what is correct. And in a lot of cases, giving in to some emotional sensitivity hurts the person. It doesn't actually... Pretend you knew someone that was addicted to cocaine. And they were addicted to it so much that they lost all of their money, they lost their house, they lost their family, they lost everything because they were addicted to it and they had to get some cocaine. Now pretend this person is like your father or someone you really love and you really, really care about. Okay? And they come to you with nothing one day and they're like, please give me some money. I promise I won't spend it on cocaine. And you know they're going to spend it on cocaine, but you really love them. You want them to know that you love them. You're going to really try and get them not to spend it on cocaine. But if you were to give them money in that situation, you're like, I'm thinking I'm a good person. I'm going to give him money. It will make him happy. I know it'll make him smile right now. So that must be a good thing to do. that's again going for the short term instead of the long term. Short term, he will be happy, meaning right in this little moment today, in this little tiny, tiny section of time that doesn't really matter, yeah, he'll be happy, but you weren't being a good person in that situation. You were being a stupid person. Being a good person in that situation would be doing the hard thing and saying, no, listen, I'm trying to help you. I love you. I cannot do that. I'm trying to help you get over this. And in the short term, they're going to be sad and they're going to get angry and they're probably going to start running you through this big guilt trip and about how whatever. And you got to be stronger than that. You got to know that your decision was right and that you're helping them in the long run. You really are. And that analogy works well for like drugs and money and for that whole situation. But as soon as it comes to someone being emotionally sensitive, no one gets it. An example is this. I'm bad at doing these examples. I keep trying to give an example and I always feel slightly off. The cocaine one was good, but like this one I'm going to try and do for someone who's overly like sensitive emotionally, right? Say you're thinking, I'm going to be me and I'm going to talk about this belief I have, right? Like, this is just me, something I believe, right? And you know that in the short term, if you just don't respond the way you want to respond, short term they're going to be happy. They're not going to get all offended and mad at you because you were just quiet about it, right? But in the long term, like, they're going to end up running into that eventually, and they're still going to be weak again and sensitive again in the future. But if you just talk about it now, if you just say the thing, you're going to get so much more anger right then, and them fighting you right then in that moment. So short term, it's not going to be good. But you're being a good person by standing up for and preaching what was true and what was correct. And if you avoided that, you would have been giving in to that weakness. Like that cocaine addict, that was his weakness. You're giving in to the weakness of a sensitive, emotional person. By the way, there's nothing wrong with being sensitive, and there's nothing wrong with having emotions. The way I'm saying that is also making it sound like that's like some big bad thing. It's not. It's just, I'm using that as an example of someone who gets offended at things that, like, they're too weak to be able to correctly determine how things should make them feel, I guess. So, anyway, just to clarify from last week's podcast, don't go be mean to everyone and it's their fault if they're mad. Be a good person. Of course, be a good person. But don't fall into the worldly trap of trying to do anything that makes everyone around you happy, because that'll just make you be two-faced and be a different person around everyone you're around. Set up a good, strong belief system of what you believe, and if someone asks or if it ends up coming up in conversation, that's what you stick to and that's what you do. And unfortunately, sometimes you're going to be talking about that stuff to someone that it's going to offend and someone who doesn't like it. And in that situation, it's like, I mean, this is what I believe, you know? That guy doesn't have to talk to me. I'm sorry if you feel offended. You shouldn't, don't feel offended. Stop feeling offended. And we're just talking. It's just kind of chill. And that's a much stronger person thing to do. That's a much more righteous person in that situation. Someone who gives in to someone else's weakness by avoiding a subject or something is weak themselves. No one in that situation is benefiting from anything if you're like, and I do that all the time. I make that mistake all the time. Another thing is, in the last one, when I said, those people I was dating, and then I said, that sounded plural, and it was meant to be. The way that was kind of worded made it sound like I was dating two people simultaneously, and that it got screwed up because, like, they found out about each other, or, like, some weird thing like that, like I cheated on someone or something. Nothing like that happened. It's not what it was at all. To summarize that whole thing, just so that everyone's clear and everyone knows what that is, I got real close to a girl. I dated her for a long time. We had lots of intimate, loving, emotional, sexual times for like 2 whole years. It was really about 2 whole years. We were a very big part of each other's lives for 2 years. Very, very, very close. Best friends, tons of memories. Happiest time of my life, by far. And that was all good, but it ended up to where at one, toward the end, while we were still dating, I was like, I'm going to have to break up with you because of a few things, but think of this more as like a temporary thing, because I would consider dating you again if you were to like kind of fix this stuff. It's just the stuff that you're going with that I can't date someone who does this, and until those things change, I'm sorry I'm not able to date you. You don't have to change those for me. I'm just saying that's kind of where my line is that you have crossed. And so that happened, and we ended up breaking up. But then after that, the weird thing is that nothing really changed after that, You usually break up with someone and you become way distant and you stop doing the stuff you were doing together and whatever, right? Normal breakup. That's not really what happened. We broke up, air quotes, but nothing really changed for months. Nothing really changed at all. And then months after that, probably 3 or 4 months or something after that, then, we were still happy and having fun and stuff, but those problems were still there, and we didn't really, she didn't really change or anything like that. And we weren't officially dating at that point, but the term dating is just a title. It's all it really means, and what's really going on there is the connection that you have and what you're putting into that relationship. And anyway, like 4 months later, I was like, listen, that stuff that I broke up with you about, it hasn't actually changed. We actually do need to do like an actual breakup thing. And that time she got like devastated. The first time we were sad, of course, but it wasn't like this huge, horrible, devastating thing. Not nearly as much as it was for her the second time. And so I want to be very clear. At this point, we have separated, we have broken up. It's been about 2 years. We're separated, right? I tried to make that very clear, and maybe she interpreted that wrong. But here's where things got more saucy. Around that same time is when her sister, who happened to be a twin, broke up with her boyfriend. And her and her sister, me and her sister were friends that whole time for those 2 years. We weren't like, we never like were like super into each other or did anything or anything like that. We were friends and whatever, but we didn't get like super close at any point. We were kind of close, but not like real close or anything like that. Anyway, after I broke up with her for real, and her sister broke up with that guy for a little bit, me and her sister were like kind of there, and we were like, oh man, that sucks that happened with you guys, and oh yeah, it sucks that happened with you guys, are you doing okay? How are things going, And we ended up just getting closer and closer, and ended up hanging out a lot, and I still ended up hanging out with the first one every now and then as friends, because we also established we wanted to stay friends, which might be also a little bit different than most breakups, but more common, where you're still friends, but it's obvious you're not doing anything like that's super past friendship. And anyway, but then me and her sister were getting closer and closer and closer, and it ended up to where we started like liking each other. That's another air quotes, liking each other, like crushy type feelings, right? And that sounds so like young and like teenage stuff, but it was kind of that type of thing. And so that happened, and at one point I ended up, and I didn't want to tell the first one because I knew that would like bug her a lot and bother her a lot, but also in another way I felt like I kind of should tell her, like it like, not really that I owed it to her, but like it would be a lot worse if she suddenly found out and it wasn't from me, because that would make it seem like it was this big secret. And then there would be questions about when it started, It could potentially become a much worse thing than it actually was, I didn't want it to seem like this, like, have her find out by some other way and like, what, are you serious? Oh, big freak out. No, I was like, I'm gonna need to tell her at some point, and really don't want to, and that's gonna be like a gay conversation and whatever, but whatever. And then even the second sister was saying the same thing, like, we should probably tell her, like, just so that this doesn't seem like some sneaky thing or something, because we didn't want it to be. And I ended up telling her, and it was big and horrible and super devastating. She ended up telling their dad, and for some reason, I don't know, this was the dumbest part. For some reason, their dad overblew it, like this huge, like, gigantic thing. He started preaching to them about how much of a horrible person I was, and that I was going to become a polygamist and end up trying to marry both of them, and how I was playing both of them the whole time and had them both like some weird, creepy, like, psycho, you know, triangle of, like, deception and lies. And that's what it sounded like, because the second girl was telling me, you know, was trying to keep me caught up on all that. But anyway, that was kind of the story. So when I said the people I was dating, I never ended up being, like, actually, like, you are my girlfriend, I am your boyfriend with that second one. We were never actually dating, but we went on dates, air quote. We went and did stuff alone together and went and, like, ate places and whatever like that. So, I mean, all of the weird titles and stuff like that, I hate so much. I've always hated it. Like, oh, are you guys dating? Oh, no, we're a thing. Oh, really? Yeah, what does that mean? I don't know. Oh, no, we're not dating or a thing. We just go hang out alone together all the time and go eat places and go watch movies together and go sleep at each other's house. But we're not dating. Oh, it's like, what? Oh, yeah. We have sex all the time, but we're not dating. No, we're not together. It's just, like, sex stuff. It's like, what is that? It's all of these, like, labels and stuff are really, really, really stupid. It's about emotionally what's going on there. And whatever you want to call it is what should happen, the only thing that's important is that you guys are on the same page about it. It doesn't actually matter what you're calling it at all. And if you're on the same page about it and you decide to say, we're not dating when people ask, fine. You know, it doesn't really matter what other people think about where you guys are and about what words you use and how other people think that what that means. That stuff, I've just had so many problems based on, like, what are we calling it right now, you know? Are we dating, or are we... No, we're a thing right now. I broke up with a different girl because of that, you know? She kept saying we were a thing, but it was also established that we couldn't go do stuff with other people, right? This is when I was super young, by the way, so this is going to sound like a retarded situation. It was, but, you know, it was, like, established we couldn't go do stuff with other people, but we're not official, we're just a thing. And it was like, okay, what? And then one day I was like, listen, you need to decide. We're either dating or we're just friends. And by dating, I mean when people ask, it's like, you're mine, I'm yours type of thing. And it's like, all right. And I was like, you got to decide that. And she's like, thinking about it. And so I'm thinking, she has to think about it. Let's just be friends, you know, whatever. And anyway, she ended up wanting to date me. And then when she said that, I was like, no, let's just be friends. So I guess she really actually didn't really have a choice in the matter. So those were a couple things from my my first podcast that sounded a little off. But right now, so here's what happened. First one, I had that gross coffee, tasted real gross. This week, I just got home. I just worked for 9.5 hours, and I didn't make a sale, by the way. So that was 9.5 hours of nothing. There was no purpose. Same result as if I had just stayed home. But that's what the grind is, you know. That's one of the reasons I wanted a sales job, was to try and gain the mental fortitude of things like that, and the emotional, like, having to build the patience and things like that. Whatever. The point is, though, just got home, real tired. It's 11:30 at night. Get home. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go record it. And I was like, wait, I need something to eat. Just saw a bowl sitting there on the table, opened it, the light wasn't on. I was like, that sort of looks like salad. I dumped it into a bowl, grabbed a fork, went out to the shed, boom, eating it. And in the light now I can see that about 90% of it is shredded carrots, and then the other 10%, I see it's got some crunchy green It's not green, it's white. Some crunchy white. I think it's not cauliflower. It's like the hard part of lettuce. You know, a lettuce leaf, the middle of it's like that harder bit. It's like sort of transparent almost on it. There's those in it. And then imagine those, but purple around the outside. Some of those as well. I think it's a different kind of lettuce that's just purple and crunchy. So the purple crunchy, the white crunchy is 10% of it. The other 90% is shredded carrots. But here's the weird part. If that's just what it was, I'd be fine eating it. But it's got to be coated in some kind of sticky liquid, or it's must be coated in something like that, because when I eat it, it's got this hard tang, this really hard taste that I can only describe as like a tang, or like a bittersweet thing. So I'm sure some of you know what kind of food that is. Speaking of some of you, by the way, that is crazy how many views I just got on that first week. 1 week, actually 6 days, not even a whole week, has that been up. And in the first hour or two, whatever it was, few hours, when it hit 1,000, I was like, 1,000 views, alright, because I only uploaded it to YouTube, that one. You know, maybe I'll end up uploading them to other stuff that podcasts are on, but that one was only on YouTube, and I was like, 1,000 views for YouTube, you know, whatever, it's only been a few hours, I'm not going to get upset about it, it's only been a few hours, you know, expecting more, 1,000, not great, right? Got up there, 5, 10,000, once it hit like the 100,000 mark, I was like, you know, maybe it'll work up to about what I was expecting, but it's already been, you know, 2 days, 3 days, and 100,000 isn't, you know, it's just not quite what I was expecting, but I also didn't really have a big expectation for it. And another part of it is, remember, the whole purpose of this is just really to entertain me. So if I don't end up with any views, it's not like a big deal, but it's also like this personal, like, record game almost, like, ooh, that'd be kind of fun, like, oh, what did I get this time? Oh, whatever, you know. But if it stayed at 0, it'd still be like, I'm still gonna do it, maybe, you know. I don't know, it's like, if I feel like doing it, I'm gonna do it. I never have to worry about, if I don't feel like doing it, I'm not gonna do it. So that relieves all the stress. There's zero stress about it. It's just, it's whatever. So, anyway, 100,000, I was like, alright, 500,000 is when I was like, alright, that's closer to what I was expecting, right? Pretty good, right? Great. Maybe, I don't know, pretty good. 500,000, pretty good, 500,000. But when that hit 1 million, like the end of it was probably about this morning, I was like, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. I can tell now that there are more intelligent people than I was expecting. And with this big of an audience, I'm kind of like, you know, when I talk about my tangy carrot salad, and I say, some of you probably know the name of this bowl as well as whatever the tang is on it, then now with, you know, maybe potentially 1 million views, I can hope that there's actually someone out there listening that actually knows the answer to that. So because of that, it makes me want to do 2 things. Knowing how big of an audience I've got, 1, it makes me want to ask more questions. It makes me want to be like, you know, hey, if someone knows the answer to this, let me know, so I can actually know the answer. I want to learn. You know, because that's cool. If no one was going to listen, I would probably still be like, you know, I wonder about this, whatever. But I probably wouldn't, like, you know, have a call to action. Yo, what is that? Tell me. Which I'm going to do now. Second thing it makes me want to do, what was the second thing it made me want to do? Have 1 million people watching. Ask more questions. Makes me want to. 1 million people watching. Lots of people watching. As you can tell, there's no, like, script or anything like that, because I know that was about to be a joke that was going to be entertaining to me. I know it was, because that was actually the first thing I thought of when I said I have 2 things. And then I thought of the second thing, and now I can't remember what the joke was now, though. Basically, it's point. I'm pretty disappointed by that. Huh. I can't think of what the second benefit would be. Oh, speaking of benefits, though, I got a check already from YouTube. I thought that it would take longer than that. I was literally like 6 days ago. Maybe it was because when you hit 500,000, I have no idea how the algorithm works, but I got a check for, a few $1,000s after a couple days. I was like, cool. I wasn't really expecting this to be any kind of source of income or whatever, but I was like, all right, it's nice. Anyway, I can't remember what the other thing was I was going to tell you. Tangy carrots, it's gross. I ended up with gross food. I like salad. Salad's great. I thought it was salad in the bowl, and I put it in a bowl. And the reason I did that was because I thought it was salad, and I like salad. I also like coffee. I brought coffee last time. Both weeks, something that's supposed to be a good food. I'm expecting it to be a good food, a food I like, and it ends up being just this weird version of it. This whack trash right here that I'm eating. It's not cool. It's not fun. Another thing that happened last week is I wasn't really, when I was about 20 minutes in, I was like, I'm going to make myself talk for an hour. I ended up talking for 57 minutes, because obviously before an hour I was like, I'm not going to talk for a whole hour. I'm going to stop now because I feel like it, and it wasn't an hour. But my point is when I was at 20 minutes and I had big goals, I was kind of imagining myself talking for that long, and I was like, what am I going to talk about? How can I talk for that long, And I ended up doing it, obviously, and that was fine, but it added this weird thing in my throat. Not like a thing, but a feeling. It was a weird physical, like when you have a cough. And what ended up happening from that is I slowly got sicker and sicker and sicker, to the point where I missed 2 days of work because I had the flu and a high fever and was coughing that barking cough that's super annoying. It's and anytime you see someone in public doing that, you're like, whoa, go home, get away from me. You're obviously contagious, That's what I had. I even have that today, and I was at work, and yesterday I was at work with that. But it's I just got sicker and sicker from that podcast, and I was like, dang, maybe it was that I'm not used to talking for that long. I don't know. But this is another skill I'm now needing to learn. I'm wanting to learn, that I'm going to try and learn, that I'm going to attempt. It's talking for an hour about stuff. That reminds me, I started, months ago, 8 or 9 months ago, long time ago, I was talking to a friend about how I have listened to the Rooster Teeth podcast a few times, which is a group of funny guys say funny stuff on a podcast, and they started it 10 years ago or whatever, and I've been listening since episode 100, but I started at episode 1, so I've listened to all of them now. And I was saying that it was a good podcast, and my friend's like, yo, listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. And that was the type of thing where you're like, oh yeah, okay, what is it, oh, okay, yeah, I'll listen to that. But, low-key, you have no intention of doing that. You're not going to do that. Do you ever do that where someone's like, yo, watch this show, it's a really good show, it's about this and this, and you're like, oh yeah, and you sound interested and stuff, and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you're just like, I'm not going to do that. And that's one of those white lies I'm talking about. Speaking of that, that's something that you shouldn't do. And that's another thing I do. I'm a big hypocrite, by the way. Tons of the stuff I'm saying, do what I say, not what I do. Because I'm trying to do what I say, not what I do also. But it's basically, if someone were to tell me about a show that they really want me to watch, usually I'll be like, okay, and I'll pull out my phone and make a note of it or something and be like, I'll look that up. That sounds really cool. And sound sincere about it. But what I've started doing lately, which is what you should do, is I'm just I don't know, I kind of stopped watching TV shows. I'm I won't lie. I'll give them the actual reason why I'm not going to watch that show. I might be I haven't, if I hear about it more, I might watch it, but I usually only watch stuff that's, pretty big and winning lots of awards. I've said that to people if their show sounded like some low-budget trash. I've said I've almost fully fallen off of watching shows. I stopped watching. I usually only watch YouTube now, which was true for a while when I was saying that. It's the same thing with the white lies. It's if they hear stuff like that, they're going to kind of have a better idea of how the world is and how it's more honest and it's it's better. I don't know how to explain it. Like when I say more how the world is and how the world works, you can say, but the editor, how is just telling, how is that, you're making it sound like this big philosophical thing, how the world works, when you're just talking about why you're not going to watch a TV show. But that goes back to like the subconscious stuff. Obviously, that's not a very big thing and it doesn't affect how the world works, but the subconscious implications of them doing that 57 times and hearing 57 people turn them down, and maybe 80% of those are for a reason of their TV show isn't very good. Like, I'm just trying to give an example. It's really hard to talk about this type of thing. It's like this weird... Your brain can slowly notice so many tiny, tiny things about how things are statistically and slowly end up building the way you talk to people and building your personality in a way to where you can be more successful in the long run. But only if people are actually honest about that type of... I mean, even if people aren't, your brain's still going to build that type of stuff. But if people were always honest about things, always completely honest about everything, then the amount of... the speed at which knowledge and just, like, human intelligence and growth would speed up by thousands and thousands of times. My point is this. My friend says, listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. And I was like, okay, but I wasn't actually going to. And obviously for like 9 months I didn't, and I never had the reason to or anything. But then, about 1 week ago, it was less than a week ago, it was since the last podcast, I was like, one day, wanting to listen to something, and looked at all of my things I usually listen to, and was either caught up on them or didn't want to listen to the few that I wasn't caught up on. And so I was like, I want to listen to like a super popular podcast, like what's a big one? And I googled like the biggest podcasts, most listened to audio things, and the Joe Rogan one was on the top of whatever the first list was that I clicked on. I was like, oh dang, someone told me to listen to that a while ago, alright, whatever. Then I looked at a few more articles, and different ones were on top and whatever, but the Joe Rogan one, I was like, I did tell my friend I would listen to that, and he did say it was like funny and like kind of comedy, which is what I'm in the mood for. Whatever, I'll try it. Downloaded it, went to episode 1, which aired 8 years ago. Went all the way to episode 1, listened to it, and I'm like halfway through episode 2 now, so I'm not listening to them super fast, but I like them. They're good, and I don't care about advertising other podcasts, by the way. Like, go listen to it if you want, I guess. Don't listen to it. If you like it more than this one, go listen to that one instead, or don't. That's what, whatever. But anyway, he talks about some interesting topics that I've always been super interested in, and some really stupid, boring topics that I've never been interested in. But lots of them are really super, like, deep type of stuff, like serious stuff. And it's always funny coming from a guy whose personality doesn't seem very serious. He's like kind of a comedian, and he's probably high while he's recording, and he is swearing and using all these like F-bombs and talking about fart jokes and things like that. So it's like lighthearted and whatever. But hearing someone with that personality talk about serious topics that are like can be really deep, like actual like philosophical questions, can be really entertaining. And he might not necessarily be right about it, but that's the thing, is he's not right or wrong because he's not really giving an opinion. He's saying, he'll say like a theory and be like, could that be the case? I don't know. It's interesting, and it's just funny and interesting because it makes you think about that type of stuff. Makes you, consider that type of thing. I don't know. It's really cool. There was so many topics that he's talked about already on his second podcast that were big topics that I've thought about before, that I've always loved talking about. It's really cool stuff. One of the new ones, though, that I heard on there that I've never heard before is, like, one thing I have heard before that I actually believe parts of is the theory that memory gets passed down through bloodlines and DNA. And listen, I didn't just hear this theory from Assassin's Creed. There is lots of actual evidence behind stuff like this. But, so I have heard about that. I have heard about the theory of memories getting passed down through to your descendants. And not like memories like super vivid, like, oh, for some reason I just imagined myself in the 1800s taken out a loan in this weird Western bank. not like something like that. I'm saying just deep-rooted, like specific, like fears maybe, like or higher statistical chances of certain addictions because someone from I guess some addictions, I don't know, just more general basically, not like a super vivid memory, but anyway, so he was talking about that, and then it kind of segues into kids who are like retarded or screwed up or like have autism, because this was like 8 years ago, and there was lots of stuff about autism back then, like people trying to figure out exactly what causes it and what it was and how to classify it correctly and things like that. Now it's less of like a big thing. Some people with autism are like basically whoever you have sex with, whoever you have a kid with, like, some people argue that if I have a kid with an 18-year-old, that it's going to have stronger genes because they're at a more healthy point in their life, and their genes at that time when they mix and when they create a kid are strong, good, like high octane, high protein genes. You know what I'm saying? And how does that affect the kid? And like maybe obviously if two extreme retards have a kid, their kid might be retarded. And there's been studies like if two like white trash loser, super low income, like gross addict weirdo people have a kid, but then that kid gets rushed to like some other people end up raising it, some like maybe rich family or more stable family, is he going to be a totally normal kid as if that stable family had him? Or is he going to be more susceptible or have a higher chance of loserisms like his actual parents? And stuff like that I had heard before, of course, but the part that I hadn't heard is those weird theories about maybe whatever you're thinking about or whatever person you are at the time of conception, like when you have sex and when you make that kid, maybe even like your thoughts at the time of when it's happening are actually creating the kid, and are actually like, or maybe the thoughts and the mentality you were when that semen was produced or whatever, things like that. And it's like, maybe there's so much we don't know, and there's so much like stuff about the mind and like deep complicated things. Another thing that I loved is lots of people think that humans evolved from apes or monkeys. They think that we slowly, over the course of millions of years, as things mutated and slowly like blah, blah, blah. When I was in school, I loved science. Science was by far my favorite subject, and that's super broad, obviously. That could mean rocks, and that could mean space, and that could mean light waves. I know how broad that is, but it was honestly science in general was so entertaining to me. And like I finished my junior and senior math classes of high school when I was a sophomore, and I didn't even have science the last 2 years of high school, which sucked to me. But anyway, my point is I love science. I know a lot about science. I have spent a lot of time learning about science. And I've spent more time learning about science, more time learning about the evidence we have for evolution than I have learned about religion and that I have learned about God. I honestly could list more evidence for evolution and for like mainstream science and things like that than I can about religion and that I can about my beliefs in God. And by the way, when I say I don't like religion, by the way, when I say like things like religious beliefs, I don't like religions. I'll get into that in a second, but basically I'll come back to that. But I do believe in God, and I believe that it's just weird to me how much I know about science, how much time I've spent there, how much it makes sense to me, and how much I can think about it, but how I have less of that for my contrary beliefs, yet I still believe that more. And you religious people might say, oh, it's faith. It's because you have faith. It's because you are making yourself believe something even if you can't see the evidence. No, that's retarded. I hate that. Even the Bible talks about that. Even the Bible's like, listen, you just gotta have faith. I don't like that. I'm not gonna say I don't agree with it, but it probably can end up causing like the most happiness or whatever if faith, I guess it's good. that's not the way my mind works. I don't like that. I can't do that. I need evidence, and I need things to work and to make sense. I think that's why I like science so much. It's because it's basically a puzzle. It's the piece fits, and if it fits well, and if it fits there, it goes there, right? But the reason I still believe what I believe about God, I promise you, is because things that I know fit there and explain more questions that science has than anything science has come up with, than any missing puzzle piece and theory that they've tried to slide in there to try and explain things. An example is they have some question like, where did we come from? Then they'll find all this evidence, look at all this stuff, and go, theory of evolution. And the key of that statement, theory of evolution, is the word theory of evolution. Theory, meaning obviously it hasn't been proven or anything like that. But there's enough evidence for it that it fits right there really, really dang well. Fits in there very well, to the point where, at this point, they basically preach it in schools as if it is fact. Because it does fit in really well. I know lots of the evidence for it. But I promise you, the things I know about God and about us being created from a higher intelligence fits not only those questions that they already had that the theory of evolution explains, but fits many, many, many other questions in every other aspect of science that you would think aren't even tied into that subject at all, Like, how can us being created by a God explain anything at all about, I don't know, what's something totally unrelated in science? Like, the way water works, or the way the stars move, or the way DNA strands look, or the way language exists, or the way the subconscious mind works, or anything like that. It seems unrelated, but more things fit to the puzzle with that than anything else. I can't remember why I started talking about this. I'm going to try and backtrack and talk about stuff I've already talked about to try and get myself to figure out where I was going. I was saying how he was talking about... Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember. So lots of people believe in evolution, and they think that blah, 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 animals, boop, 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 up to people, bing, good. That's where we are now, and that we're slowly going to keep evolving and continue getting better, in air quotes. And then people who believe in God, lots of people, not everyone, most like mainstream, like Christians, I guess, believe that God went zing and used magical powers from it, pop, and then there was people there, and he went, yay, people, I'm magic, I made people, go do your thing, people, go do my plan, or whatever, depending on the God, go do this, or I want you to do this, or whatever their book says, and they think that happened. But as far as, I'm trying to get this tied into technology, basically, as far as technology, group one about the science, technology is just something that we've slowly, started building as we evolved and started understanding more about electricity and machinery and wanting to make our lives convenient. And so technology and its advancement has slowly just kind of been a byproduct of us evolving. And the other group, the religious group, it's sort of the same thing, right? God went zing, and then humans were there, and then he went, do stuff, and then we were doing stuff, and then, oh, technology's cool, and then we made technology, and, oh, this is cool, it helps us out, whatever, right? I think both of those are kind of retarded, but the weird thing, one of the things I'd never considered that was on the Joe Rogan podcast that he was saying as a theory, I don't think it was his theory, it was someone, maybe this might actually have been his theory, but the way he viewed it was as technology being its own organism, kind of, its own, life form. And he said, obviously, if you personally identify or define life as something with blood and organs and a heart, obviously it's not life. But if you define life as something that changes and adapts and grows and can, slowly can change things and change the world and learn and get better and evolve, because he's way into evolution and evolving. And obviously technology does evolve. And he thinks, the way he sees it, or whatever this theory was he was talking about, is imagine technology as its own organism and humans as another organism, and those two organisms are working, have a symbiotic relationship with each other. we as humans have bacteria in our body that are separate organisms than us, that we have a symbiotic relationship with because we help each other. It's like a mutual relationship where we help them, they help us. You know, we help them by producing whatever their food is or however it works, and then they help us by getting rid of toxins or however it works. And then with technology, though, he was saying how, imagine that as a life form, and not as us having created that, but as it being a life form that is helping us evolve as we help it evolve, and that it's equal going both directions. You know, you might say, oh, humans invented technology. Yeah, but technology at its base forms could have easily influenced us in a way that made its life easier. Stuff like when we started creating the first computers and stuff, it was making technology's life a lot easier as it was making our life a lot easier. That's that cough I was talking about earlier. You can thank episode 1 for that. And that was interesting, and I don't really agree with that. I don't think technology as a whole is an organism. I think that's stupid, but it is a weird theory. It is a weird thing to think about. It is a cool, an interesting idea how technology, I mean, it is true that technology is helping us evolve. It is changing our lives. It's changing how we interact with everything, how we interact with the world, how our minds work. It's changing every single thing about life and our existence and reality. And we are changing it just as much. And it's crazy stuff. It's cool stuff to think about. Something that he did talk about that I have thought about many, many years ago. And I don't know if I came up with this on my own. I probably did because I'm so friggin' smart. But is, you know, tons of people who aren't religious say, how could there be a God? And how could there be spirits? And all of this stuff you talk about, like, where is it? You know? You can't see it. Like, even I have a retarded family member, in air quotes, family member. It's a stepdad thing, where he's an idiot, and he always talked about, like, oh, if I can't see it with my eyes, it doesn't exist, you know? I haven't seen it. You think a God exists? Show me where he is. Really small-minded person. Imagine, you know, those people like that are retarded, because say someone farts and you physically do not have a nose. You just don't have a nose, your face is effed up, you're a burn victim, whatever. You don't have a nose. If someone farts next to you, okay, maybe you don't have ears either, or maybe, let's assume it was a silent fart, okay? Your life changed to 0 right there, because you didn't smell anything. Nothing at all changed. You didn't, like, pick that up. You didn't notice that. And if anyone else was sitting exactly where you were sitting, they would suddenly be shrouded in this giant cloud of horrible stench, and they're freaking out and gagging, and they have the person's feces particles going into their nose and lungs, and they're coughing, and it's just this awful experience. But for you, it's as if no one ever farted, and it never happened. And the only difference between those two situations is one person was capable of sensing something, and the other person wasn't. So right now we have, we have 5 senses. We have touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. And those are all ways that we interpret the world. And every single thing that we know, every single thing that we have ever learned as a species or ever accomplished, any goal we could ever have, are all based on, and all of that thought is coming from a perspective of a reality where only those 5 senses are in existence and able to interact with things and learn things. Just those 5 senses. There could be so much stuff all around us, an infinite number of things constantly touching us and interacting with us, and I mean, I can't say touching, but constantly all around us, that we just don't have the sense to interpret at all. We don't have the sense to sense it. You know, it would be like if someone who's blind, they don't have color. If they were born blind, they've never seen color, but their life, because color does exist, whether color actually existed or whether it actually didn't, it would not affect that person at all in any way, because they didn't have the ability to interpret it. You know, the idea of like other dimensions and things like that. Sorry, I'm just like, I have phlegm in my throat. It sounds like I'm crying. I'm not actually crying. Or maybe I am and I'm just really passionate about this, but like another example. Say there was a life form in outer space that the life form was made out of light. It was made out of light particles and light waves, and it was a being whose energy and whose soul or mind, or however you want to look at it, existed only within light. Obviously, that thing wouldn't have lots of the senses we have. They don't have a physical body. It's something completely different than us. So far different than us, in fact, that the way that they interpret the entire universe probably wouldn't be by, how we do, where it's this big open space and you have these balls floating around of planets, and some are really hot and some shine really bright and some suck stuff in and whatever. I don't know. My point is if those things came to Earth or were at Earth, their light hit Earth, they might not even perceive Earth as having any life on it, The light that's on Earth, they might perceive as the same as, like, some kind of weird plant that we would see on another planet. Basically, they might see that as some thing that's not very important, or a life form that's so much smaller than them that it doesn't matter, or whatever. And, maybe they're thinking, like, oh, we can use the sun for something, or we can whatever. But my point is they could be here on this planet and not know that there is other life here. That could easily happen, and that could easily have already happened or be happening. If you have life forms that are something different than what we can sense, or something so far different that it doesn't recognize us as a life form worth or worthy of trying to save or even trying to communicate with at all, it's not going to waste the time to. We always look at stuff through a perspective of things being like us. We always imagine if an alien comes to Earth, it's going to be like in this body, and, maybe it'll be big, maybe it'll be scary, maybe it'll look like us, it'll probably come in a spaceship. All of these things, though, are coming from the assumption that we have that they feel things, they touch things, they build things, they sense things, and all of those are what we do. But why are we assuming that's what they do? If something, like on Rick and Morty, that guy who's made out of gas, right? Obviously, that was a little bit different because he could see and he could talk and he could touch things and whatever. But he also viewed carbon-based life forms as this weird parasite thing, and he didn't even recognize Morty and humanity as anything that was worth saving or anything. And it wasn't because he was, like, evil or because he was, like, something like that. It was just a difference of perspective. We right now could be surrounded by other life forms that are some other energy or moving at some speed that we cannot detect, and they could be all around us. And maybe they see us and even recognize us, and they're not effing with us, or maybe they are. I don't know. It's weird stuff. It's crazy stuff. It's weird stuff. I just looked at my list again, and on my list, one of the things I wrote was coffee. I don't know why I wrote... Oh, wait. I don't know if this is why I wrote that, but that actually reminded me of something. Gross coffee is gross, but I did tell you that I use this, like, French vanilla coffee creamer to kind of drown out the taste. The best possible coffee you can get. The best possible coffee ever. Like, I've been to... Obviously, I've had tons of stuff at, like, Starbucks, and, like, I've gone to, like, Beans and Brews and other, like, coffee locations, and I've used, like, espresso machines, and I've had a very wide variety of coffee. And the best coffee that I've ran into so far, it tastes the very best. It's not the highest quality coffee. It's not the most expensive coffee. In fact, it's from a gas station. Not any gas station, though. It's only from Maverick, right? Adventure's first stop, Mavericks. You go in there, you get a large, you go over to their house brew. It's either called house brew or house blend. Maybe it's house blend. But you put your cup in there. If it's a large, then you fill it all the way up until about 1.5 inches from the top. I think 1.5 inches. Maybe 1 inch is the key. Yeah, probably 1 inch from the top. Turn it off. You go over to the creamer machine, and you do the Delight French Vanilla, and you fill that thing up to the very brim. Then you snap on one of their lids. You go pay $1.91 in Utah. It's probably different prices somewhere else. You drink that. The best coffee I've found so far ever. It's fantastic coffee. That was kind of a side note, though. I looked at my list again, and I was like, that didn't talk about that. And I actually don't know. Maybe I had some coffee story that I didn't. But I don't know. It's good coffee though. Go try it. Those ratios are very important, though. You need those choice ratios right there, because you can get that coffee to be much too bitter. You can get it to be much too sweet, and that's it. No, what the thing is. Lots of people are like, I kind of have started believing that opinions, everyone thinks opinions are like, well, people are just different, Some people like these other things that other people just don't like. But I've started thinking that that's not the case, that people don't do that. People aren't just different in that way, and that it actually all has reason behind it that you can, because I've changed people's opinions. Like, obviously you can change someone's opinion giving them more knowledge than they already knew, right? Of course. Like, oh, well, this thing is, this car is way better than this car. You go, no, yeah, but that first car has this, and this, and this. And they, oh, it does? Oh, you're right, that car does have that, changes their opinion just because you gave them information they didn't know. But what I'm saying is, say it's like a movie, right? Say it's like a TV show or something. Say you're like, Breaking Bad is a better show than Walking Dead. And someone goes, no, Walking Dead's a way better show. And you go, some people might say, well, everyone's different. That's just more his style. He just likes that more. It's like, well, and this is just an example, okay? Everything I'm about to say about Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, it's not my actual beliefs. I'm saying this as an example that can be used for other situations where your opinion is right, okay? Like, say they were to say that. Walking Dead's better. Oh, well, he just likes it. It's like, no, he's an idiot. Because it's just like, I feel like it's an intelligence thing or like a brain power thing. It's like a brain capability thing. It's like watching this show, your brain was able, this person's brain was able to pick up this, and this from the show, and realize this, and realize the skilled writing over here, and remember the foreshadowing from back here, and see how good that acting was. And it's just basically the capability of the brain noticing more and being able to process a lot more than the other person. When the other person watches the exact same scene, and maybe they're just stuck in the story, like, oh yeah, Walt threw the pizza on the roof, whatever, right? Or maybe he is noticing more, but I don't know. I've just started, and I don't know if this is true yet, but I've started thinking that opinions and people's opinions on stuff is actually just a lack of brain power or a lack of brain capability. I'm not even saying mine is right. I'm not even saying maybe their brain was more capable in that area than mine was, and their opinion's actually correct. But my point is it's just weird how it's like, you can explain, like, say you're like the story of Grand Theft Auto 5, and the writing makes it the greatest story single-player campaign of any video game to date. And someone was like, what are you talking about, dude? I played that entire campaign. There were way too many side missions. There was so much stupid stuff. Why did I have to drive that tow truck 4 different times? Why did I have to keep taking pictures for that guy? Why, thinking about all this stuff. This person, person A got aggravated by this, and this. When person B went through those exact same scenarios and instead saw specific things about it in like a weird, like different positive way or more positive way that made him like it more. Now the question is person B more intelligent because their brain saw more about it and was built like a bigger picture that they liked more? Or was person A more intelligent because their brain was trying to do higher functioning things and the stimulus that they were giving it wasn't enough and it was just stupid and boring? Or is it neither? Both brains are completely equal in that regard, but one guy is just more positive, and so he's trained his brain to kind of see and notice the positive, good aspects of it, and the first person had only noticed and gotten like emotionally invested to like some certain negative aspects about it. Who knows? But it's a good question. It's, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out one day. Lots of people, when they, I'm going to go now. This is a thing on YouTube right now. If you're not on YouTube, whatever. On YouTube, though, at least of right now, there's like buttons, and there's subscribe buttons, and there's a comment section, and there's dislike buttons, and there's all kinds of buttons. There's buttons all over the screen. There's pause buttons, buttons that go to other videos, buttons that close the windows, buttons that turn the computer or phone off, buttons that go to porn, buttons that teach you how to illegally download movies for free and you can't get caught doing it. There's so many buttons on YouTube. Not even necessarily on YouTube, but like when you're looking at your screen or whatever. Some of those buttons you can push and they will sort of do a positive thing for me in a way. Like, I know that if you push the subscribe button, it'll make you, I guess it kind of just makes to where if I were to put another video up, it would put it in your subscribe section. And if you were, and I guess it would also benefit me if, like, I'm trying to get more subscribers, I guess. If you click the like button, I think that somehow helps the YouTube algorithm if it's trying to pay people or get their video on higher result lists or something like that. But, some of those buttons help me out. Some of them don't. Some of them, dislike button, it probably helps me opposite in the algorithm thing. Not clicking subscribe would not give me those benefits, whatever. But I'm not going to tell you to click any of those. I would never tell you to click any of those, because you need to think about decisions like that. You can't just go, oh, haha, he asked me to do it in a funny way. Click, all right, there you go. It's always good to be funny. Great that guy was funny. But I think it's always a very good idea before you make decisions to think about them. Think about them for a long time. Go get other people's opinions on them, probably. Compare them to other possible decisions, like clicking other buttons, like the dislike button, or like just closing the window and doing nothing. Maybe pausing the video right here and not continuing. There's so many options. You need to compare. Making a pros and cons list is always a very good idea. You can easily see it laid out before you, the good things about it and the bad things about it. And you can see how bad some of those bad things are and how good some of those good things are. Weigh them against how much it hurts or benefits you personally, and also how much it hurts and benefits other people like me or other people in the world. Remember earlier I said being a good person is always top priority. And you can add that to the pros and cons list and take that into consideration when you're making the decision. But when you think your mind's made up and when you think you've made the decision and you say, I know what I'm going to do now. Sometimes you might still not even do it. You probably shouldn't in some situations. You think you've considered everything, but have you really asked another person? Have you really read about it, Reading about stuff and researching stuff and seeing if it's a good idea can help in so many aspects of life. Maybe if you're religious and it's some moral issue like subscribing to a YouTube video, or it's some like salvation issue like liking a video, you can easily look that up in like the Bible or the Quran or the freaking Buddhist one or whatever. You can look it up and you can read about it and see if you get any godly apparition appear and tell you what to do. Praying too, if you're religious, also trying to get some message or feeling or emotion or note in the mail or something from your God from praying, whatever it is. That reminded me, earlier I said I was going to come back to why I didn't like religions, but I didn't come back to it. So anyway, making decisions can be very important. I actually go multiple days before making any decision, any decision at all. I don't make decisions until I go multiple days of thinking about it and considering. People say, hey, the editor, what do you want for dinner? And I'll say, I'm going to get back to you in a day or two to decide whether or not I'm going to answer that question. And then I think about it. And it's a very good idea. And doing this and having these operations can help you to make wiser and better decisions that better benefit everyone in the long run.